All right, guys, we're going to go on and get started. Are there any questions on any of the assignments so far? Any questions over any of the homework assignments thus far? Questions on any of the homework assignments thus far? Okay. So we're going to pick up where we left off yesterday. Guys. So we're picking up where we left off yesterday, and it's this one here where we're relating or kind of comparing two equations or two sets of information with each other. So we're looking at these two pieces of information, this equation and chart. So for this here, they tell us that two prom venues charge a rental fee plus a fee per student. The table shows the total cost for different number of students at Lakeside Inn. And that's our table here. The total cost of Y students in dollars for X students at Sunview Resort is represented by this equation. So we have an equation and we have the chart. Now there's two things that we want to find out. The first is we want to see which venue charges less per student. Then we need to determine how many students must attend for the total cost for these two places to be the same. So to figure out the cost per venue or per student for each of these venues, we really need to find the slope, because the slope is telling us how much it costs per student. Well, for one of them, for Sunview Resort, it already told us that, because the cost per student for it is going to be what? 10. So for Sunview Resort, it costs $10 per student with initial cost of $600. So if you're going to attend or have prom at Sunview Resort, it's going to cost you $600 up front and then $10 per each student. Now the other place is Lakeside Inn. Did they tell us how much the initial cost was? No, because the initial cost is going to be our y-intercept. So we don't know that. And they didn't specifically tell us the cost per student. But again, the cost per student is just going to be the slope. Because if we can find out the slope, we can find out the cost per student. And then we can use the point-intercept form, our y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1 to find the equation. That way we can figure out how much it's going to be, cost or number of students it will take for these two to be the same. So the first thing we'll do is find the slope for Lakeside Inn. And this is our y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we need to pick two of the y values. So what's one y value we can use? Which one? So the first one, 100 and 1500? Yeah, we can use that. So the x value is 100 and the y value is 1500. Now we need to pick another one of those points or one of those groups. 150 for x, and the corresponding y value is 2,100. Now, does it matter which ones of these we use? No. But we can plug this into the calculator at this point and go from there. Now, if we didn't plug it into the calculator, we can do this by hand. So we're doing 1,500 minus 2,100. And 1,500 minus 2,100 is? Now, if we do 100 minus 150, we get negative 50. And lastly, we just need to divide these two here. Well, the negative divided by negative is a positive. So we need to do 60 divided by 50, or 600 divided by 50, which is, how many times does 5 go into 60? Well, 5 goes into 6 once. Well, and that's it, because 5 goes into 60 12 times, so 50 will go into 600 12 times. Yep, so how much does it cost per student for Lakeside Inn? $12. So, for our first answer, which student charges less per student? Lakeside or Sunview? Sunview, because how much do they charge per student? Now the second part is asking how many students must attend for the total cost to be the same. Well, we could go through and try to plug numbers into both of these to see where they come out to be the same, yes? But if I had the two equations, if I had the equation for Lakeside Inn and we could see the graph of it, or just have the equation of our y equals mx plus b for this year, well, we're looking for what? Where the y values are so I could set the equations equal to each other. Because we know for Lakeside Inn for certain that we are going to have 12x plus whatever our y-intercept is. Because with any of these equations here, when we get down to the final answer, it's really y equals mx plus b. Do we know what the y-intercept for Lakeside Inn, or the initial cost for Lakeside Inn? Well, no, it really didn't tell us, did it? I mean, we could go from the top one here, so 100, and I could subtract 12 each time. I could do it 100 times to get back to 0 to see where we're at. Or, I'm going to erase this here so I have a little bit more room to write. We can do the y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Because all we need is a point in the slope. Well, we know what the slope is. The slope is 12. Well, we can pick the first one. We can pick any one of these sets of points to plug in. So if I pick the top one, 100 students, so 100 for x, and 1,500 for y, we can go about solving this here. Any questions on how we set this up? Now the first thing we can do is distribute the 12. So we still have y minus 1,500. 12 times x is 12x, just like we expected, because again, that's going to be part of our final answer. Now 12 times 100 is 1,200. Multiplying or dividing by 100 is nice because we're either adding zeros or taking them away. Now the last thing we need to do is to get y by itself, so we need to add 1,500 to both sides. So y is equal to, well, looking at this here, so we have to do 1,500 plus negative 1,200, which is plus 300. 15 minus 12, 3. We add the two zeros, and we get this here. So our other equation is y equals 12x plus 300. And again, so we're looking to where these two equations are the exact same. They have the same y value, yes? So what we're saying is we're looking for really when is this going to be the same as this? When are these two going to be the same? So if we want to find that, I just need to set this equal to that. So what we can do is set 10x plus 600 equal to 12x plus 300 and solve for the value of x. So if we're solving this for the value of x, what would we need to do first? We can subtract 10x, yes. Which will tell us here, these cancel, telling us that 600 is equal to, well, 12 minus 10 is, so we have 2x plus 300. Brendan, stop spinning that. What do we need to do next? Yes. If we subtract 300 from these here, they cancel out. 600 minus 300 is equals 2x. And last but not least, we need to do what? Both sides by? So how many students do we need for these two to be the same? 150. Guys. So the cost for the two venues are going to be the same as at 150 students. Any questions on this here so far? Yep. Any questions on any of this here so far? Now, which one of these two would be cheaper if we had less than 150 students? Which one would be cheaper if we had less than 150 students? Which one starts off cheaper? If we had 0 students, just to pick a venue, which one would be cheaper? Lakeside, because our initial cost is what? 300, yes? So if we're talking about having less than 150 students, which one's going to be cheaper? Lakeside, because they're starting off cheaper, so per student, it's going to increase. Because the slope of this is 12, and the slope of this one is 10, this one here is going to increase faster. It's going to eventually overtake it. And they meet up at 150. So if we have more than 150 students, which one do we want? Sunview, because even though it starts off more expensive, it eventually is going to get cheaper than the other venue. So we could look at the overall costs going down. Let's say table set. Let's go by 10. Start 10, 10, second table. So 10, 20. So the one in blue is our lake, or the resort. The one in red is Lakeside. So as we see here going down, Lakeside is cheaper. For 70 students, Lakeside's 1,140. The resort is 1,300. So we can see that it is more expensive. And as we get closer to the 150 mark, we can see that the prices are actually getting closer together until we hit 150, where they're both 2,100. Now, if we go 10 students over that, okay, now Lakeside is $20 more. And as we keep going out, these numbers are going to get farther and farther apart. So, and that's something that we have here. Now, we will start dealing with the graphing calculators more as we go throughout the year, because they are helpful, especially for graphing. We can graph graph these equations. And we could have calculated what the intersection is. The point where they cross. Any questions on this here? you have the rest of the time in here to work on the assignment. Now 3 through 9, you're two parts. You're finding the equation of the line and describing the slope. Finding the equation of the line and describing the slope. So you're talking about rise over run. For like the first one, you'd be talking about for every 5 meals, you make $1 in tips. You're describing the slope.